Okay, so good evening. It being 7:05 p.m. on Wednesday, September 10th, I hereby call this meeting of the Westborough Affordable Housing Trust to order. My name is Alan Edinburgh. I'm a founding trustee on the trust. I'm currently serving a term as the chair. To my left is Mark Silverberg, Ed Bain, Hank Rauch, Kate Storm, and our assistant town planner who provides staff services to the trust, Kristen Bellinger. The four trustees here unable to make it tonight is Steve Herrera, our other trustee, and we do have one open seat. If the type of work we're doing here, we talk about tonight, excites you, come see me afterwards. We're always looking for interested, motivated folks to join the team. We're a team of volunteers who are committed to the mission and the goals of the trust, not only, which doesn't just encompass affordable housing, but housing affordability. And so tonight what we want to do is we're going to start, I'll go over very, very quickly the mission and guiding principles of the trust. We always like to do that because as we walk through the project, we hope that the way we're managing the project and what we expect going forward honors our guiding principles. The project we're going to talk about, it's one project, two sites. So we're getting, I can answer questions and talk a little bit about why we're doing it that way. We'll cover the overview, scope, and status. Where we are in the process. We've actually been working on this project for
year and a half.
About a year and a half. So where we are now is we're ready to sort of say, here's what we're thinking, and here's the direction we're heading, and then what happens from here on forward. Because we're still a bit a ways from design and permitting and shovels in the ground. But now is the time where we can say we have enough of a concept, we have a sense of what's feasible on the properties, that we can start sharing with the public, getting your feedback, getting your input on it, hearing your concerns, so we can address those as we go forward with the project. For each of the two properties, we have some draft concepts. This is not necessarily what the project's going to look like. This is to say, these are answering questions like how much density we can have, can we get enough parking, do we have a place for snow removal in the dumpster? Can the school bus turn around? Can the ambulance get in and out and the fire truck get in and out safely? It let us go, we've been to the town's Business One Stop, which is a meeting of all the permitting and boards and committees involved in the permitting process to get feedback. So for example, that's where we learned that Beach Street, given the concept of our plans, we're going to need one, possibly two fire hydrants that are not on Beach Street, that are in the property. Right? And so we want to make sure we understand all of that. So we do go out and look for a builder to build the project. They know what we expect and we can honestly appraise their proposals. And then, even though this is not a public hearing per se, but it is a public meeting and it's in sort of our rules, it's discretion of the chair. So my discretion tonight is that if you have questions, we're going to let you ask, so we'll answer them as best we can. If we can't, we'll let you know, we'll write them down, we'll get back. And publicly answer all questions as well, because we want you to ask questions. We want you to understand what we're doing, be comfortable with it. If you have concerns, this is the starting point when we need to hear it. So we take those into serious consideration as we move forward. Okay. So our mission is to provide for the creation and preservation of affordable housing units in Westborough for the benefit of low and moderate income households, and support efforts to improve housing affordability for our community in general. And so the trust isn't just about we're going to build affordable housing units. When we talk about moderate income, those types of units don't count towards our state count of what's affordable. It's higher income than the low income housing that is typically thought of as affordable housing, but it's still a need, right? That's moderate income housing is where college graduates in their first job can afford to buy or rent. Okay, in Westborough, there's a term called the missing middle, right? And Westborough has a bit of that, where we do have affordable housing, and we do have housing that people who are established in their lives can afford. We don't have enough what used to be called starter homes. We can get into a house, afford to live there, put on the garage in the second story, or add, make the dining room bigger, or add a bedroom. We don't have that, and we don't necessarily have the land for that. So how do how do we make that? And when we talk about overall housing affordability, it comes into some of the other projects we've done. We did a pilot with rental assistance to help people with a short-term need avoid eviction. Right? People who could otherwise afford to live in their apartment but had some event in the short term that would cause them to lose their housing. Okay? We did a very limited pilot. We're actually going to reopen it up because we have some remaining funds that we committed. And what we learned is that there is a demand for that kind. So now we'll go off and see if we can help someone, some organization that's their primary mission, provide that service to our community. We're looking at a down payment assistance program to help first-time homebuyers who are Westborough residents or town employees be able to move into a home that's market rate or moderate income and isn't necessarily low income. And Boston has a plan. There's a statewide plan through Mass Housing. They're showing success. We want to test. We'll be testing the market here, see what the demand is, how much need, and if there's need and demand, we'll advocate for that. Other areas where we talk about housing affordability, the trust was involved and provided feedback for the inclusionary zoning article. We had some input on the MBTA zoning and expressed our view about what we felt was workable or what needed to be changed. And so we're looking, to help advocate to make sure that big picture, it's not just about more housing, it's about a housing that's affordable for the people who want to live here and the people here. We helped fund the town's housing production plan. That's a document that gets certified by the state that sort of says, here's your economic need, here's your housing need, here's a plan for the next 10 years on what type of housing you should encourage and build. So we helped fund that. Typically, towns only do that when they're below the state threshold for the minimum level of expected affordable housing. I'm proud that Westborough chose, as a result of the master plan, to do the plan anyways, because it does provide a roadmap. It lets developers know before they start spending money what we expect of them and what we're looking for when they come to town and want to develop land or redevelop properties. There are a couple of other things that we've done recently as well. Off of Connector Road, over by the highway, there was a struggling extended stay hotel. It was a Marriott residence. It became a Sonesta. That property is being converted to apartments and long-term rentals. We provided, the trust voted and provided a financial subsidy to defray some of the cost, and they've expanded the number of affordable housing units in that complex from 20% to 25%. So in addition to having more actual affordable housing rental units with a residential preference as well, that lets the entire inventory of units there count on our numbers for the state requirement for affordable housing. And so it benefits us, and it reduces the risk that we could have a developer come in and be able to ignore our zoning rules and our planning process and build high-density housing where we don't want it or in a way that doesn't benefit the community. And so we've got that going on as well. As we do projects, we have a number of guiding principles. I'm not going to read them all. I refer to Mass General Law, Section 40B. That is the state rule that says municipalities need to have 10% of their housing be what's known as a subsidized housing inventory, which is a mix of actual affordable housing and housing units we can count as affordable because they're in an apartment complex where 25% are actually affordable. When you go below 40B, developers can come in. The planning board has no control over the project. There's a set of guidelines from the state that the Zoning Board of Appeals follows, and they issue the permit. This is when communities get large projects that overwhelm the schools. We had one project in Westborough that did that about a dozen years ago. Had a large jump in the school population with it. To give a sense, right now, Shrewsbury, either in development or planning or notice, they have 4 hostile of those 40B projects happening, total of somewhere between 1,200 and 1,500 units. Grafton as well is running into that problem. So right now we're at 11.8%, so we're above the threshold. Part of our mission is to help the town stay above that 10%, not because we don't want more housing or don't want affordable housing. It's because we want to be able to manage it, where it's located, what's the impact going to be on the schools, on emergency services, on town services, so that it's built out and planned in a responsible way that benefits the community as a whole. As we go through some of the other ones we talk is we always consider and respect the impact of projects on town services. We know that what we're talking about tonight is a project in 2 neighborhoods that are well established and have some unique characteristics. And so we want to respect and reflect the architectural and styles of housing in those neighborhoods, and we'll talk about how we're doing that, even though we're at a little higher density. And we want to work cooperatively with town boards and committees and departments. And so as I talk behind the scenes, we've had informal meetings. At an upcoming planning board meeting, we're initiating a formal discussion saying, if you were going to be the permitting authority for these projects, what would you want to see? So that when we go to the zoning board of appeals for our permit, the planning board can stand up and say, we're comfortable with this, that it's going to work well for the town of Westborough. And everyone's in agreement. And there's, and for these projects, by the way, the historical commission is involved. We've already had conversations with them. Conservation's involved. Who else? The select board will be involved, right? And so we work together to make sure that we're working in the best interest of the community. So what's the overview of the project? Our goal here is to develop net new affordable housing units for ownership. So at this point, our plan is that these units will be available for sale. It is 2 parcels, but 1 project. And why do that? It's money.
Now, who owned that project, who owned that property, Westborough?
Yeah, so great question. 45 High Street Extension was a piece of unused town-owned property.
That's been now a long time.
It's been that way. We believe it was taken for unpaid taxes, that there was a rock quarry of all things on that site.
They got a big hole there.
There's a big hole where they quarried rocks and they dumped other boulders back in, by the way. Our survey work has said, and that was taken for unpaid taxes back in 1937 and been unused. Before we moved to acquire the property, we know that there were 2 citizens who had asked the Rec Commission if they would build a park on that land. The Recreation Commission at the time said no, too costly to level the property, not enough public access to it, other playgrounds that are in walking distance, etc. Before we moved to acquire the property from the town and transfer it, we did go back to the Rec Commission and ask if they were going to reconsider that decision.
So that was actually owned by the town then, right?
That was owned by the town.
Yeah.
So 6 Beach Street was a private residence. The family was going through a financial situation. I will say the house was not in foreclosure, but it was put up for auction to sell the property, to help them meet whatever financial issue they were having. The trust, at the time we bid just above the assessed value of the property, which is typical for a municipal entity to do. We did outbid 2 private developers who were looking at very different style of projects for that property that personally I don't think would have fit with the style of the neighborhood, given the size home they were looking to build. And now turns out there was a goodbye. The way property values have gone, the assessed value of that property is now above the price we paid. So the trust owns both properties right now. And I'll get into the process of what happens with the property and how it gets built in just a little bit. Okay. 2 parcels, 1 project. Why? It's about the money. There's overhead when you do affordable housing. A lot of paperwork, administration, monitoring, reporting, rules we have to follow. It costs the same. That pretty much costs the same whether it's 1 house or 10 or 20. And so the more we can do, the better. The bigger problem is when it comes to state and federal funding and having them grant money or provide interest-free loans and things of that nature. The bigger the project, the better. And Westborough, we're not in a position for us as a trust in property acquisition, things of that nature, to go out and say, we're going to do a 50-unit project. Right? We don't really have the land for it. The land we do have, the trust couldn't afford, and it would be probably inappropriate for us to ask for that much money from the town to come out of the funds that the town has available for affordable housing. So for us, projects on smaller parcels, anywhere in town. I know there have been people who've questioned why are the properties that we're building where they are. Those are the ones we've been able to acquire. Our town has 6 precincts. We have investigated properties and looked at potentially purchasing or trying to purchase properties in every single precinct. Big ones, small ones. Some, if they came up today, we'd be able to do it, but at the time they came up, we didn't have the funds, given what they were expected to sell for. And so we're not, there are goals that the town has as far as housing density and location. And when you plan affordable housing, you need to serve the residents as well. So you want some of your affordable housing you want in an area where people are going to be able to walk to shopping or to a medical appointment, or for, to do shopping or for services, because you will have affordable homes. If you need an affordable house, you may also need affordable transportation, right? Other people who could benefit from affordable and moderate affordable and moderate income housing are okay being in a neighborhood that the VIA service doesn't go to yet, right? That the transportation won't be an issue. And so we need to understand who's going to use the properties and focus on properties where we provide benefit. But we are looking, we actually looked at some properties off Glen Street, way down by Tufts. We've looked at properties. You probably noticed that there are some developments going up right now that have no affordable housing in them. The reason for that is those were permitted before the town's zoning, and the planning board and the town meeting voted to require affordable housing component in single-family housing developments. And also before the town started, and for most projects, putting an expiration date on the permit. So they got permitted, one project got permitted, 8 years ago? I'm thinking the writings too.
Yeah.
8, 9 years ago. Predates inclusionary zoning. The developer sat on that land till he knows he can build $1 million mansions, and hopefully the hill won't slide into the backyard where it's being built. But you can't go back and say, oh, by the way, now you have to do affordable housing.
Yeah.
I tried.
He tried. They did. Mark was on the board at the time. They tried. We've tried, but it just doesn't happen. So we're looking at doing this in a way that gives us the best opportunity for other people's money to defray the cost of the development. And the way affordable homes are built, we'll have an estimate. Once we have a final design, we'll actually know in today's dollars what those would sell for. We can tell you right now, a 2-bedroom affordable house with certain square footage, so many bathrooms, the state will authorize a maximum sale price of
About 240,
about $249, I think it is right now.
in that neighborhood.
In that neighborhood, right? So we look at that and say, that's the money that we'll get at sale. How much does it cost to build?
Yeah.
And then the difference between that isn't profit, it's the subsidy that's needed. Because it's probably going to cost you more than that $249 to build the home. And that can come from the trust, it can come from grants and loans from the state and the federal government, it can come from other nonprofits. Believe it or not, it's a weird thing, Caterpillar, the big tractor company, they fund affordable housing because doing it gets them tax credits, right? So we'll go see if they'll give us money, right? We'll figure out where we get it from. More about the overback, there's some guiding documents that we're using for these as we look at the mix of what we're building and why. First is the master plan, which the big need is expand affordable housing opportunities. The master plan does talk about higher density in the downtown area and the areas adjacent to downtown. We're not looking at high density development, and when you see the concept plans, we'll talk about what that means. We also have the senior needs assessment, which is for affordable ownership option for people who want to age in the community, but don't need the bigger house. A smaller house will do. They don't necessarily want to be on two-story homes. They might want a single-floor living, right? You have those options. We're able to provide those. And so as we look at this project, we're looking at having percentage be age-restricted, 55 plus, so that we create those opportunities. Housing production plan talks about both senior downsizing as well as starter homes, young families, young professionals, people right now, Westborough, people aged 23 to 32, our population for that age range is 15% below the state average. And the problem is it means someone who graduates college can't come back. Even if they're working in the area, they can't afford to come back and live in the community they grew up in. Also importantly, is that's a demographic that usually has some disposable income, and they like to shop and eat locally. So we want a more vibrant downtown. We need some 26-year-olds who got paid on Friday, who are gonna walk downtown and have dinner and hang out and watch sports on TV, fill the restaurants, buy from the local merchants. We wanna help, there's an economic development component as well. The project scope, right now we're working with concepts. I'll get into more what we mean by concepts. We're looking at anywhere from 12 to potentially 20 units in total across the two sites. And with the concept, you'll see the densities is different. It's a mix of single family and duplex building, and a mix of starter home and senior or 55 plus housing. As I talked, we're looking at roughly 1/3 senior, 2/3 family, based on our assessment right now of the demographic need. We may tune that later. And we've determined that we will do a Westborough residential preference. What that means is at the time a unit comes up for sale, if there's a Westborough residents on the waiting list, for those units, and only 70% of the units can be designated residential preference, they're effectively moved to the top of the list over a non-resident. If there are no residents on the waiting list, it goes to whoever's normally there. Westborough resident preference includes other categories as well that get preference. We can include town employees. We can include people who work in town but don't live in town at the moment. We can define resident as someone who's lived in town within the past number of years. It also includes veterans and people with disabilities. And there's some additional preferences we can include for the terms generally a single head of household. Right, so a family is split up. You've got a mom and kids. Even though her name was on a mortgage before the divorce, she can't afford, if she qualifies financially, she can take advantage of these properties as well. Yes. Oh, he's telling me to move faster. So status, the trust, as I mentioned, owns both parcels. We spent a lot of time doing stuff you really can't see. A lot of site investigation. We've worked with conservation to get, informally, to get their feedback and direction on the project. We've worked on engineering about utilities, existing easements. There's actually an existing utility easement under the High Street property. We looked at potential soil contamination, and we've done surveys and made sure we have clear title. And now we're sort of in the site planning phase where we have preliminary concepts. We've gone to multiple of the one-stop sessions with the town to get their input, feedback, and guidance. We've refined those concepts, and here we are today to share them, get your input, and start moving forward with public engagement. The process we're building is known, as I talked about 40B, it's a friendly 40B, which means we're going to be asking to build homes that are outside the standard zoning in the neighborhoods that they're in. It's friendly because we're going to work with the planning board and other boards and committees to come to agreement on, even though we're outside the normal zoning, what's workable for the town, what's acceptable, what mitigation we might need to provide. So the zoning board of appeals will actually issue the permit. Now, if we were below the 10%, we could build the project without talking to anyone, do it at pretty much whatever we want. And if the town didn't like it, and the zoning board gave us permission to do it, and the town didn't like it, the town could sue, and it goes to an appeals committee. As a friendly 40B, there's no appeals committee. So the voice of the zoning board of appeals and the permit that they issue will be the final word. And we'll live with that, and we want to. And really the key thing is we are actively, I'll keep repeating, we're actively working with boards and committees so that by the time the project gets to the zoning board, everyone is in consensus that this project can work the way it is we've managed the impact on the neighborhoods, on town services, and we're providing the strategic and the housing needs that the community needs. So our next steps, so we're here, we're soliciting input from you. This is the start of the process. As we go through, we'll continue to update. Where appropriate, we'll do more meetings like this where we can get abutters and neighbors and interested people in the community in to provide feedback and answer questions. If at any point in time you think we've gone too far or too long without doing that, send us a note and we'll schedule something too. Because we might think, oh, we're good. You might think, oh man, they're moving pretty quick. We should get another meeting together. And we'll be happy to do that. We need to finalize the project scope with affordability mix, unit type mix. We're working on a draft financing plan that lets us know how much of the trust funds we might need, what other sources there are, and it gives an idea for the developer. The way these projects get developed is the most inefficient way to build a house is to have the government build the house. Okay? There are rules that we have to follow that private developers don't. There's some rules we have to follow to do as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to issue a request for proposal, get multiple bids in. We'll have criteria. We will publish those in advance. Our RFPs are public record. We'll take public input on that as far as what we're looking for. And we will pick the lowest bid that does the best job of meeting the criteria that we're looking for them to do. Those developers who bid will come back with their plans and their engineering drawing and their concepts using ours as a guideline, but they'll tweak it and tune it in a way that they feel they can build it most cost effectively and manage the project. At that point, we award the bid. We do two things. We purchase and sale agreement, so the developer then takes ownership of the property, and they also sign a land development agreement. And the land development agreement holds them to everything in the RFP that they agreed to do. And if they fail to do it, we get to take the property back and not give them any of their money back. Okay, that's the penalty. The Baylor Street project, we had a land development agreement. The house that was built met the specs of the RFP and of the land development agreement. There was one point, there was a permitting delay because there was an engineering document that the town didn't have, it had expired, and the town couldn't locate it. And so they had to go redo some engineering documents. We gave them a 30-day extension to do that. It all worked out well. The homes got built. By the way, that's being lotteried off on the 18th, next week. We'll know which family gets that property. So now I'm going to get into what you really want to see is what it's going to look like. So oohs and ahs. So we'll start with High Street Extension. We have two concepts. One is 5 housing units with 16 parking spaces. The other one is 7 units with 18 parking spaces. Why so many spaces? We want parking for visitors to be off-street. High Street Extent, it's a residential neighborhood, it's a narrow road, there are folks who've lived there a long time, there's families with children, right? And by the way, we're including turnaround, because the first time I walked out of the property and someone said, hey, what are you doing here? And I explained, they're like, can you have a turnaround for the Harvey's trucks, please? Right? And so we're sensitive to that. So both concepts have the same thing as far as the footprint of each building. These will be 2-story buildings. We've got parking, there'll be ADA and visitor spaces and handling things like where's the snow gonna go when it's plowed so it doesn't end up in the street. So this is our 5-unit concept. The entrance from High Street Extension is here. You'll notice that we have heavy vegetation along the street to shield the scope of the project from the neighborhood. It's a heavily wooded lot right now. I realize you can see through to the apartment buildings. We're even going to shield some of that from view with the vegetation on the truck. So it fits better within the neighborhood. There'll be, there's 3 homes up front, 2 in the back corner. And you can see we then have parking spaces. So not all of the units will have parking right in front of the unit. It'll be a park and walk scenario. And we've got space for mailbox, dumpster location. And this is designed to allow a school bus. Some would say more importantly, the fire department's tower ladder truck to be able to get in and out and do its work and turn around. And there, so this is the 5-unit concept for that property. And this, which the engineering firm labeled Concept C, is a 7-unit version. Again, we still have heavy vegetation in front and along the side. It's more of a straight line in. A little higher density on the housing. Again, we make this a full T at the end, so there's a turnaround for a school bus, a garbage truck, fire department vehicles, emergency vehicles. And it has a sort of different layout, areas that can be recreational space for the residents. If there are kids there, they have a place to play or put a swing set, be able to do something like that. Okay. Any questions about these plans?
Gonna be quite a project.
It's gonna be quite a project, yes. Yes.
So all the stone wall that's there, next to the Hitchings property, is that gonna remain? Are those trees gonna?
Which is the Hitchings property?
It's 43 High Street Extension?
So it's this one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I believe the stone wall is outside our build area, so we would leave that untouched.
Okay, and the trees?
And the trees there as well,
Okay.
yeah.
Is it lot size?
Pardon?
The lot size.
So this lot is about 8/10 of an acre.
So it's 1.2.
No, that's Beach Street.
I'm sorry, yes.
This is like 0.79 acres,
0.79.
right? So from a planning perspective and a permitting perspective, because the abutters include the townhome apartments off Mayberry Drive, we are well below the average density of the neighborhood. But we recognize that, yep, we have high-density housing in the complex. On one side of the property, we have single-family homes in a stable, in a very mature, well-maintained, well-cared-for neighborhood at the other. And so we're looking to, even though this is higher density, lower the impact with the vegetation barriers, with the single entrance in front, and by providing more parking than we probably would want to, but avoiding, hopefully, the need for any on-street parking. That people could, have a guest or two show up and they'd be able to park in the spaces.
Now, when is this gonna start, in the spring, or?
So we'll get to timing in a bit. We are still a ways away from shovels in the ground, and I'll give a sense of that timing. Okay. Yes?
Now, that street is narrow, and you said you got a street waiver
Pardon?
for the 45, for the High Street extension. The street is very narrow. Now, if someone parks on that, you gonna have people park on the street? Or
No.
they park on the street?
No. The reason we have so many, we have extra parking spaces, and even the turnaround area, like during the holiday season, can be used for parking. Because we don't want the residents or their guests to park on the street.
And there are no sidewalks on High Street
And
Extension.
right, and there are no sidewalks, so kids
the
going
cars-
home to
The
home.
cars speed right around the corner,
They
really
fly, they
fast.
fly.
Okay, so we need to make note that we should maybe consider mitigation, something related to speed signage or speed humps. So,
There's a lot of people.
before we
going on.
propose that, we'll come back to you, because there are neighborhoods that say put in speed humps,
Well, we've been
and then
there
they don't like it.
We've been here 50 years, and there's a lot of dogs walking by,
Yep,
a lot
yep.
of young
So
kids
there's
with
a
their
lot,
parents.
So and without sidewalks, I walk around there every day. So when the cars coming around where the bridge is, there's a curve there, they speed, you think they press on the gas before they even get there,
Yeah,
And especially in the wintertime and when the snow starts melting.
yeah,
it's
We're the
kinda
house
hard-
right across from the
It's
bridge.
kinda hard
Okay.
to, yeah.
yeah. Okay.
So on say, 8/10 of an acre parcel, you're gonna put approximately 20 people, 15 to 20 people, and all their vehicles. That's what it comes down to, isn't it?
Potentially, yeah.
15 to 20 people, let's figure 2 per house, that's 14.
Right,
Some are gonna have more than 2, few are gonna have less than 2, if any.
but
And-
this is,
I assume that
most
each one is,
multifamily housing runs 1.5 to 2 spaces per unit.
I assume that the
We're
same
looking
thing
at-
translates over to Beach Street, if you're gonna have a 2-bedroom, which is probably,
We'll get to Beach Street in a second.
but it's still the same, it's the same principle, you're gonna have
Yeah,
a mother, a father, and a kid maybe.
Potentially,
3 people
yes.
in each unit, so there's 21 people there.
If we,
21 people on 8/10 of an acre.
yes.
Does that sound right to you?
Given,
I live on 1/3 of an acre, it's me, my
Right.
wife, and my daughter. And that's how it is through my entire neighborhood. But you're gonna put 21 people on that parcel. Does that sound right to you?
so potentially we could have 21 people per acre. If we went with this design, with this level of density, which, again, that's one of the reasons we're holding the feedback sessions, is we look to provide the guidance to the developers on the bids. When you look in, and maybe Mark, you can speak to it, with multifamily housing, density is usually significantly higher than that per
Yeah,
acre.
so on.
So these are,
I
because,
understand the density's higher, but
Right.
does that sound right to you?
Well, when you say right to me, it's not what you're used to, but these units are all detached. They're all 2-bedroom, I forget, 750, 800 square feet.
if they're one story,
Well,
if
they
they're
may-
two-story, they'll be 1,400
There
square
may be
foot.
some 1-bedrooms.
So if you're gonna do the same thing over on Beach Street, they're 1,400 square foot per unit.
Yeah.
That's 2,800 square feet per building. That's a 3,000 square foot home. I don't care how you slice it, or how you dice it, or how you carve it
Let
up.
me just
The
ask.
concept of these
It's
schools
not,
is
it's not 2,800 square feet, the max, we're looking at 1,400 square feet max. A 700 square foot footprint times 2 is 1,400 square feet, I'm not talking 2,800 square feet.
Either way, you're still talking about
The Beach Street,
putting,
right, we are talking about higher density.
over on Beach Street, you have 18 units for one of your drawings. You gotta put 36 people.
Potentially, yes.
You gotta put 36 people on
Potentially, yes.
1 acre outside my back door. In my backyard, you're gonna drop 36 people.
Let me recognize Hank for a second.
Yeah, I guess, I understand what you're stating is a reasonable.
What I'm stating,
Excuse me, what you're
Can
stating.
you let him
is a
finish,
reason-
please?
Given the proposals we're talking about, it's a reasonable estimate of the population on the site. Well, my question is, what is it about that population on the site that concerns you?
the noise, the cars, the
Okay.
trash. I mean, you can go on and on, all the things that concern me about it. The privacy, it was very considerate of you. You thought of the trash man, the fire department turning around, playing for the kids. Did you think about my property value? Did you think about my privacy? Did you think about the impact that you have on the people when you dump 36 people in their backyard?
Okay, so.
Did you
we
think
are-
about that?
We are thinking about that impact. It's why we're enhancing the visual barriers with landscaping around for private,
Listen, I've been
for
building
private.
for 40 years.
Can I finish, please?
I understand
Can I finish, please?
about barriers.
Right,
And
so-
what happens is when you're gone, that person comes in and cuts down all the bushes and trees to make room for their picnic table and their kids to play in the backyard. Listen, I've been doing this for my entire life. I've seen these projects all the time.
Okay,
And,
Appreciate it.
again, you thought of everyone except for the people in the neighborhood
well, okay.
who don't really want it.
Okay. We've heard your feedback. We'll take it into consideration. I personally believe that part of the reason we're here tonight is because as we've talked about plans and concepts, we've had conversations, both within the working group and within our public meetings, about neighborhood impact and how we're transitioning the use of a property from one style of housing to another and what that means. And so we are taking into consideration. If we weren't, we wouldn't be here tonight having the conversation to hear your concerns. So we've heard your concerns. There's some other folks that have questions on this property. Those gentlemen in the back?
Yeah, so
Stanley?
you keep presenting multiple designs.
Pardon?
You keep presenting multiple designs
Yes.
as possibilities.
Yes.
What is gonna define, what are the defining factors of picking up one design over another? And who gets to decide that?
So
Do you do it, the developer does it, do we as a community do it?
So we're looking for your feedback, because these designs are second or third, depending on the design concept, second or third iteration. We want to hear your concerns, your feedback, what works, what doesn't work. We'll further design. We can't go to a developer and say, build this. If this was the one we picked, and I'm not saying it will be, we can't go to a developer and say, build this. What we can say is, we want you to bid on something like this. And we'll be defining a whole set of criteria that we look at. So the feedback here, like for example, have we thought about noise? Okay, so what criteria do we need to add to our request for proposal with respect to noise, sight lines, privacy? Maybe this isn't enough. Maybe it's a fence that has to be there by deed. Okay, there are a lot of things we can build into the project. Okay, so final design will also depend as we go back to the town, before we go out to RFP and get their feedback in another round, as far as preference for what the planning board would like to see. We're starting that conversation with them in the next couple weeks. And conservation and historical commission with respect to Beach Street and the select board, and come back. At that point, we issue the RFP. We will build the RFP, it'll be on the website. We will have it, we discuss the contents of the RFP in public meetings. Historically, we've done that as a trust. By right, since it involves the value of the property, in theory, we could do it behind closed doors at executive committee. We're not gonna do that. We want you to hear our discussions and have that be on the record. The issues we're concerning, our commitment here, and the reason we're here tonight is this is the start of the process. As we get further down the road, we're gonna have additional meetings like this so that you can see what we're thinking about and see the boundaries we're putting on the project. Part of what will happen with the bidding process will also become the part we have the least control over at this point in the process, which is the financing. Okay, and we could have developers come back and say, your preferred design is 5. We know at one point you talked 7. Financially, we need 6 units on the property to make it work. And then we have a decision to make, whether we stop the project and hold off until economic factors also beyond our control change, or we go ahead with 6 and we make those decisions. Okay, it doesn't mean we're agreeing to everything the developers do. Baylor Street, our criteria isn't, again, it is just the lowest bid. It's the lowest bid that best meets the criteria we've established.
You still haven't spoken one sentence about the people that have already set their lives there, that have already established their lives in those homes, in those neighborhoods. You haven't spoken one sentence about us.
I have.
Can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, we started this process, but we are not done with this process. Everyone here is gonna have input in this process. When Alan talks about the Conservation Commission and the Planning Board and the Select Board, we're not ignoring the neighbors. We're here to listen to you and hear what you want to see in your neighborhood. And then we're gonna include that in the RFP.
And you
Now,
put
can I
the
finish?
friendly on it.
Let him
There's
finish,
a lot of
please.
people here that wanna talk. I could talk for hours about this, right? We wanna respect your neighborhoods and understand what you wanna see in this RFP. You have to understand that the Affordable Housing Trust is out there trying to make affordable housing. We're trying to find spots in Westborough that will work for projects like this. I don't know about you, I lived in High Street Extension for 5 years. I outgrew the house. That was my starter home. I couldn't afford that house now, right? I couldn't afford the house I'm in now. There's a house on Indian Pond that's up for affordable housing right now. It's a 3-bedroom, 1,600 square foot home, right? 30 years old. They had an affordable housing restriction. It appraised at 785, right? I couldn't afford that house, but it's selling for 280. And that's what we're trying to give, is an opportunity for seniors in town who can't afford to stay in their own homes to move into a nice, newer, one-level living. We're trying to give an opportunity for a young family who maybe doesn't have a kid, who wants to come into Westborough and start a life. And that's what we're trying to do. We're not trying to shove this down your throat. You gotta tell us what you need.
Well, not shoving it down our throat would be not circumventing the planning board.
We're not.
Calling it
We're not.
friendly and saying the
We're not.
zoning board.
Everyone
gets
has to
decide.
understand.
So-
He said
Everyone
word
has
for
to
word. He said
understand.
you gotta live
Excuse
with
me,
it.
let me
This has to go to
clarify.
the zoning board of appeals for approval. That has to be publicly posted, and everybody will get a chance to talk to ZBA, because that'll be a public hearing.
Excuse me, let
Go ahead.
let me address that. By the nature of the project, by law, the zoning board is the permitting authority. We could just go straight to the zoning board. We're not. We are on an upcoming agenda for the planning board. Our ask of the planning board is, if you were permitting the project, what say you? What do you need us to do? What changes do you need? What issues are we not considering that you want us to consider? What mitigation? Noise, speed, automobile speed, car volume?
But again,
all of
the
those
process
things.
you're doing is denying everybody here the right to appeal. You said that.
No, no, no.
No.
No, what I'm saying is,
It's not gonna do anything.
okay, so we're actually providing more opportunity for public input and feedback and involvement than is required by law in normal process. We're taking on that time. You know, the question was, when's it gonna go? We're ways away, okay? Because we are months away from an RFP, let alone the time it takes to get it, managing the bid, and then the whole project continues through the actual permitting process. This is all pre-permitting. This is the stuff that in most developments, you don't see any of this until they show up for the first time at the planning board and say, we want a permit. And so the reason we're showing you concepts is because we're not done, and we want to make sure we understand the concerns that we also need to take into consideration. Because you're right, we think we've done a lot, and you're pointing areas, several people have pointed out areas where, okay, we probably haven't enough. We'll take that back, and the next time we come and we post things, hopefully you'll say, they listened, they acted, maybe they didn't do everything I thought they should, but it's clear they're taking this into consideration, and they're being reasonable about it. Okay. There was another question on this.
I just want to know what effect this will have on the property values of the neighboring homes. What,
So, the expected impact on property values on neighboring homes. Right now, this property, High Street Extension, and Mark, you can speak to this as an appraiser, and a board member, is a drag because it's undeveloped. The value of this property will go up significantly. The reality is, having affordable homes in a neighborhood and in a community, of all people, Zillow, the online real estate company, looked at 20 years of data in different housing markets, and found that what's referred to as integrated affordable housing that's in the neighborhoods and mixed in with market rate housing, that those market rate homes hold their value and see better value over time than neighborhoods without. And part of that is direct, because the overall value of this property will be significantly greater than it is today, even greater than if it was just a single-family home. And so there's tax revenue, there's other things, but also because having socioeconomic diversity in your housing stock provides better support for local businesses in the local economy. And you can support a more diverse base. We want a more vibrant downtown with more types of businesses. I know Most people have an opinion on what those should be and what should and shouldn't be in the storefronts, right? You get that diversity and vibrancy in your local commerce when you have diversity in the socioeconomic and the housing mix in the surrounding communities.
So Alan, one more thing. So these will be condominium form of ownership, right? So you're not gonna be able to just tear down and put on an addition. The condo will have to approve that. And there'll be a board that will determine, that will maintain the lots and the maintenance and so forth, unless I'm mistaken.
Yeah, I mean,
Again, that has to be up to the
That's
developer.
correct.
It's unlikely that they're gonna do this with, and try and put this in with detached single families. They're gonna do a
requirement of the
condo.
RFP, Mark.
Well, that,
and again, we-
Street
we-
properties,
pardon?
would you mind showing
Yeah,
Beach Street?
well,
properties?
let's move to Beach Street.
Thank you.
I have one question.
Oh, one quick
So
question.
I'm pretty much like a few meters from this property, right? So, again, my kids are always on the street and it's pretty much like 6 foot or maybe 8 foot street, right? So again, I have pretty much every concern the gentleman raised and the person behind me, right? Values, safety, the privacy, all of these. And also again, if I were to have an option, at what point I can say, oh, I'm not interested in this development? At what point of the process I can flag that? Or at least I can raise a concern, I don't want this to be development.
Okay, so you can start letting us those concerns now. We're gonna take this feedback, another round of refinement on design. We will build considerations into the RFP, we'll publish that. We'll welcome feedback on those criteria, and you can say, hey, this criteria isn't strict enough, or you forgot this, or can you add this? Or, ooh, this will have a side effect maybe that you're not thinking of, reconsider it. We'll do that. At that point, we get the bids back, we evaluate because it's public bid, and people ask why sometimes public construction is more expensive. It's, before we issue the RFP, we need the criteria, we need the rating scale, and we need any weighting, like what's more important than the other. At that point, when we evaluate proposals, by law, we have to say at what level of criteria what level of compliance does the developer meet this criteria? And a number score gets assigned to it based on that, based on the weighting and the relative value. It's the bid with the best number score is the one that we would start to pursue. At that point, we will be at the place where if a private developer had bought this land and wanted to do the same project, that's the point you would first have heard about the project. When they go to the planning board and say, we have a design, we want to start talking to you formally about getting permitted. All of that work is public meeting and public hearing where your input is welcome. And where, at that point, you're not just talking to the trust, you're talking to the planning board, the zoning board of appeals, the conservation commission, and the select board. And for Beach Street, the historical commission. And I'll get into that in a moment. Okay? And so we'll do the input. Okay? 6 Beach Street, similar. We've got 2 different densities. They're not highly different. Again, more parking spaces than multifamily housing zoning in Westborough requires. Keep people off the street, residents, guests, visitors, etc. And the space we need for emergency vehicles and dumpsters and mailboxes, so that's not interfering with the street as well. This parcel is unique in part because it loops around and has an abutter with 2 sides touching the property. So the first concept, you can sort of see, this is the location of the current home on the property. We've been asked, can we save the home? We may, and we'll take a second look at it, but you should know when that home was put up for auction, even if we were willing to sign a waiver, we weren't allowed on the 1st or 2nd floor because of the interior condition of the property. And what we could see, which was the basement, was the foundation. It is an old stone foundation, and in several spots it's failed. It's actually no longer supporting the weight of the house. Okay. Practically, given the layout of the house, could have been turned into a two-family, possibly. On the existing foundation, definitely not. And a number of other issues with the property. So our thought was we had the opportunity to put some in. Now, the unit sizes here, these are duplexes on the 25 by 30 foot pad footprint. So we're actually here looking at units that will be between 700 and 900 square feet, predominantly studios, one bedrooms. Hard to work a two-story into that size footprint. We'll see, we may do some adjustments, we may lower density and have slightly larger units. There's actually a second option for this design that we haven't spent the money to draft it yet, and that instead of the roundabout, a circle to turn around, we would tee it off for truck and fire truck and ambulance turnaround and have more of a play area over here and a different type of recreation space. Okay, we did pursue, could we adjust this and exit, get an easement and exit through the apartment complex for emergency vehicles? In theory, we can. The challenge is that apartment complex has a mortgage that's from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, which means we probably need congressional action and HUD to approve any change in the layout of their property. And that is, we were told 3 to 5 years and hundreds of thousands of dollars of legal fees and probably a no. So we're looking at it this way. Again, part of the way it's shaped the way it is to preserve the old historic trees on the property so that we can do some rehabilitation of them as far as trimming and maintenance. But our view is that maple tree in the middle of the property is historic. It's old. We don't want it to get harmed by the construction, and we want it to survive and live and thrive going into the future. Again, high level of shielding through landscaping, through fencing, and again, more than what would normally be required for multi-housing development and parking to keep cars off the street and predominantly behind the barriers. Okay, so this is one concept for Beach Street. Okay. And then here's another concept, a slightly different shape. This is the cobblestone turnaround with some additional parking thrown in for the emergency vehicles. It's a slightly different road layout to meet the drainage requirements and a different place. They have these units are further away from the back fence line, so there's some advantage there. It's another concept. Now, are we going with this one or the other one? The answer is no. We've got two concepts right now that are workable.
It's on the website.
The third concept on the website?
Yes, for 18 units. 9 buildings, 18 units.
We felt that density was too high.
What's the density on that right there?
So the density on this right now, this is 12 units.
Does that go with the neighborhood itself?
So I'm going to answer it twice. Legally, hold on, from a permitting perspective, it goes with the neighborhood because we're well below density per acre as it gets defined by the permitting process for the neighborhood. We realize that that's skewed because we've got an apartment building as an abutter.
That's been there forever, it's not a duplex.
No, but when the rules about density are units or bedrooms per acre, okay? So we're well below that. What we're saying here is 12 okay? Oops, sorry. Or is 10 better? Or may this be too much? Or are these units too small and we want fewer units with slightly larger living spaces? That's to be determined. That's part of the reason we're here, is because our goal is to get as much affordable housing built as we can, but we don't want to overextend what we're doing.
So you gotta do homework on it.
We're doing homework,
Yeah.
we're here, yes.
First, I just want to say that I am for affordable housing, but I am not for this project, okay? You guys purchased this property in September. It was listed for $350,000. You purchased it for $505,000. A house that was listed as, the house is likely a tear down, there will be no showing. So you purchased for almost $600,000 when you, the fact that you're gonna have to tear down this house on a 1.2 acre lot, you paid $600,000 for. That's just crazy.
So-
No normal person would buy that lot, even though it's a nice level lot, for $600,000 for 1.2 acres
First of all,
of land.
we paid $505,000 for the lot, not near $600,000.
You're gonna have to tear down the building.
Okay,
Am I correct?
yes, our plan
Is
is
not part of
that,
the cost of the land?
that is not part of the cost of the land, that's part of the cost of the development. It cost us 3 Baylor Avenue, we tore down that house. Not only did we tear down that house,
You paid
That-
$505,000 for 1.2 acres of land then in
Yes.
Westborough. Is there any other
We-
pieces of land for 1 acre going for 1.2, for $505,000
yes, yes,
in downtown?
yes.
The
So-
lot on Denny Street went for that much.
So we know that we,
If I could put up 18 units. Yeah. I'll give you 600 for it if I can put that up.
Right.
The other concern with this property is you're putting up duplexes. There is no duplexes in the whole street of Beach Street. Nobody's a duplex. There isn't even any of the they're all single-family houses. We are not a multifamily street. The houses on the street are not multifamily, nor are they duplexes. We're also in the Vintonville Historic District.
I'll talk to that in a second.
Okay? And then, did you even think about Hastings School? It's already overpopulated with students. And you're gonna have possibly families living here with children?
So, yes, we're at the point now where we're starting on the formal process as we go with the planning board of the mitigation issues, which is where we'll do, once we know how many are family housing versus senior housing, that'll give the baseline of bedrooms to come up with the student population estimates. It is true that the homes are single-family neighborhood, the vast majority of them are two-story. Design will come into play. There are, in our community and neighboring communities, multifamily homes that if you drove by them, you would assume they were single family. And that's part of the look. The property is, well, the house itself is not historic. It is on the edge of the Vintonville Historic District. We've had some analysis done on what that means. And what's sort of unique about Vintonville that we have to consider, and that'll be part of the design requirements for the buildings here. One of the reasons Vintonville became a federal historic district is it was actually in the New England area and possibly the country, one of the first planned communities, not building a community for factory owners and business owners, but for the workers in its workforce. So this effectively, the neighborhood was initially built for workforce housing. The project is designed to be for workforce housing. Part of what makes Vintonville unique is that, unlike some of the other historic neighborhoods that are predominant federal or have a mix of federal and Victorian or predominantly Victorian with high flourish and colors or ornaments, part of what defines the Vintonville Historic District is, I think it's actually phrased, the lack of excessive ornamental architecture, right? So the challenge is, as we write the RFP, and we're already in conversations with the Historic Commission to get their input, and we want their approval in what we put in and what we require from a look and feel of how this fits in with the neighborhood, is to honor the elements of the historic district in the visual look, the size, the scale of the homes themselves, and the use of it. There's some issues with these concepts, and we didn't want to delay things when we do it. 700 to 900 square feet is small. It can, yeah, you can do a 2-bedroom, just, you know, your kid has to sleep in a short twin bed, right? The bedrooms are become really small. So this would predominantly become studios and 1-bedrooms, if not all studios and 1-bedrooms. Or we would have to say, you know something, we need slightly bigger footprints and fewer actual buildings. Or we go back and say, you know what, for this to work, these should be single family and not duplexes.
The houses on Beach Street predominantly are about 1.25 acre each.
Yep.
This is,
This is definitely higher density. And that is the balance between,
and you're giving people affordable housing, something they're gonna own, with no land. Does that make sense?
yes, because that makes it, that's part of what enables us to make it affordable. The average cost, the average subsidy for an affordable home, a 2-bedroom affordable home in Massachusetts, the subsidy, the amount of money needed between what it costs to build and what you're allowed to sell it for, the average is $300,000 per unit.
What you're really doing is you're providing affordable housing to people
Yep.
at the expense of all the people around it. That's what you're really doing. You're providing them affordable housing at our expense. Adam and Danny and myself, we get to have people turning around in our backyard every day. That's what we got. We got people turning around in our backyard. We go to the other plan, lucky Eugenio, he gets a dumpster sit by his fence on his backyard and parking. That's great. He's really thrilled about that.
So we're looking to provide,
I know what you're trying to provide. You're trying to provide it at our expense.
we're not saying it's at, we're not trying to do it at your expense, we're trying
You're
to do it in a way.
you're diminishing our property values, you're diminishing our privacy, you're infringing on our comfort within our own neighborhood. Don't split hairs with me. I know what you're doing, I can see it, it's there. Everyone in this room knows what you're doing.
So can I just ask a question? So I'm curious if we came to you all tonight, so, and I want to hear, there's some other people who haven't said anything, so I'm also curious like what some other people in the room are thinking. But I'm also curious, just wondering, for those of you who have spoken, if we were to come to you tonight and didn't have any concepts and just said, we have these 2 properties and we want to build some affordable housing, what would that look like to you as neighbors? What would you suggest as a neighborhood?
Somebody on this committee told somebody else on our street there'd be only 3 houses on this unit. 3 houses on 1.21 acres. That seems reasonable. I don't know which one of you said it to the person. I don't know if she's here. I don't think she's here, but one of the persons on this committee said there'd be only 3 houses. They'd be 2-story houses, 3 units in here. That's reasonable.
Yeah, I think like we feel like we live in a very dense neighborhood already. And this is just, like it blew my mind. And I am for affordable housing, but I mean, I saw 18 units, 12, 10. I was thinking more like 6 might be nice if there were 3 duplexes. When you did the density, you said you do the whole neighborhood density, right? And then the apartment skews that because it's all there. Did you do it without the apartment to
Let's
find
move on,
out what
let's
the
move on.
density is without the apartment? Because that would be more realistic from our point of view.
Okay.
So, the whole economic feasibility issue is a problem. You say you're for affordable housing, but if you want 3, they could be 2,800 square feet homes but we can't sell them for more than a certain amount, right? And a developer's not gonna come in and build a 2,800 square foot home and sell it for 280, right? Because they're gonna lose money, right? So we have to make this economically feasible for a builder to come in and say, yes, I'm willing to build this, and and we want you to give us ideas of what would be palatable, what would work in your neighborhoods, that we can transform into affordable housing and make it reasonable for your neighborhood, for the town, for a developer to actually want to build it, and for people to want to live there, right? We're not trying to shove this down your throat. Some of you came here with open minds, some of you came here convinced that this is just a terrible idea and you're gonna oppose it no matter what. I can't tell you how to think, but I want to hear from you, and everyone up here wants to hear from you and understand what you want to see in your neighborhood, but we have to make it economically feasible.
And what I'm hearing
I agree,
is,
but I would like that question answered about if you did the density study without, and exclude the.
we could do that.
And what you would come up with.
we could do
That
that
might be different,
And
right?
I would do that for both projects.
Yeah.
for both projects.
It'd be interesting to know that transparency.
Yeah, we can do that. And I think our takeaway is we need to go back, we should go back and do some additional concept work at lower densities and check where we come on the economic feasibility of those options as well.
You can build one building, 12 units with parking and have a lot more open space.
So you'd rather have a 3-story apartment building?
I'd rather see just one building there with some sort of parking where people can pull in. I mean, look at the space that the building takes up over here by,
So on Beach Street, you'd rather see something like an apartment building?
it doesn't have to be, I mean, within reason, I mean, but I would rather see, myself, I am not speaking for everybody here, I'd rather see one building with more units and parking, you know, underneath it or in it somehow. And I'd rather it be higher than
We
that.
can't go down because we're on the edge of Cedar Swamp.
I get that. But I mean, you can, you know, they can be, I mean, the parking right here beside the common.
Yep,
You know.
the condos, they're half underground.
Oh, yeah. You know what I mean, that's one building, it doesn't take up a whole lot of space, the parking is underneath it, they're very nice, they're, you know, the value is there for the property. It just, you know, it's not bringing down the value to anybody over there. Those things are going for good money. And they're comfortable to the people that are living there. But you can still build affordable things like that.
Okay. So I'm hearing, are there other people who'd like to see a concept of 1 or 2 buildings with higher density per building?
And higher storage.
And potentially a 3rd story, or if we could do 12 unit or 10 unit or 8 unit, 2
How about just an option, you know?
Well, okay, so from here, we're taking your feedback, right? And, you know, what we're hearing is that you're asking us to invest some more time in looking at that as a different type of concept and get a feel for what that's gonna look like. And assess the workability of that, right? We did, I'll say at one point, we were looking at sort of a more row of townhomes. 1 story with a gable 2nd floor, so the whole 2nd floor wouldn't be full height. You know, sort of a cottage style home. The issue there is, and Hank probably knows the number better, once you hit a certain number of units, we have to put sprinklers in.
And whenever you drive to Natick, drive down 135 to Natick, just before you get to the center of town, they have long, thin, narrow lots. And they took it and they did it townhouse style. They turned them sideways, so you
Right.
drove in and you turned
Okay.
right
So,
into your garages. They built 6 or 8 of them in a row.
On 135.
And they're beautiful.
I'll take it out. I'll take a drive and take a look. I'm hearing other people would like us to develop that type of a concept as well for for feedback to see what it looks like?
So I just wanted to have a chance to speak also. That house that's surrounded by this development and then the apartment on the other side is our house. We're at
Okay.
8 H Street, right? So if you look at the footprint of the original house, like now, this is even closer to us, right? That's
Okay.
planning to be built. That is my daughter's bedroom. That is our office, and we're gonna be looking at the back of this thing. And it's like really close to our home. And our children play back here. Like, we don't know who's gonna live here, like, what's gonna happen during construction. Like, they play back there. Like, I really appreciate that you considered that tree. We love that tree. So I appreciate that feedback that he gave, like, was taken in. But we just, because like, now we're surrounded by high density all around us. Like, we're in a little peninsula of one home. Like, it really affects us.
Okay. Noted.
Okay, so we heard from a lot of people on Beach Street that I'm getting a sense on the Beach Street that you prefer one building. I mean, I know when I was thinking about this, I was thinking you'd have kind of different looks to these buildings and, not like generic, all 12 identical units, but that's kind of what you get with some townhouses or townhouses and everything else. But I thought this would be a little more character for the neighborhood, but if you're telling me you just want one building, we can look at that. What about on High Street Extension? What is the sentiment there?
Before we go back to High Street Extension, but I want to make sure we've also got concerns. So there are understandable concerns about noise, about light pollution, cars turning around.
Next to our house, right?
Right?
Like,
And
we get a lot of light pollution already from that
like the
apartment
proximity. So the proximity of this home, right, the overall density around your property, right? Not just during construction, but after, and even though we've planned for heavy barriers and potential offense, you have concerns around that we will need to discuss and work through. If we look at this as a plan and we say, you know what, let's alter the density down a little bit and reposition, we have flexibility here, right? And what's interesting is the designer said, let's do a roadway turnaround because kids love to ride their bicycles on that, but you lose playing field, right? And one of the things we have heard from some people that when they say sort of love about that property historically is people, when they were little, used to go back behind the house and you could play football and do stuff there. So the thought of having the modified T here and having just open space back there and not having the paving loop is there. And at this point, the town, the fire department in particular, seems that could work. They actually will need to see drawings with measurements.
You talk about high density shrubs around there, not like 3 footers, are you putting huge arborvitaes in, or what's the game plan on that?
That would be my expectation, right?
Would that be up to the builder?
Well, no, so we can specify that, right? So to sort of get into the weeds, we can say you need non-see-through up to a certain height, right? And maybe it's not all arborvitae, it's a mix of some other pines or evergreens. We can specify that it has to be visual blocking year-round, so it can't just be deciduous. So they have to look at what's physically there today as far as deciduous trees fill in a way that we don't kill the trees or accidentally kill the maple, right? Pine trees have a different acidity issue or something with maple. I'm not an arborist. The town has one. Put on the list that we need to talk to the town arborist for ideas on this. And we can require that in the RFP and say that.
Require it in the RFP, however, the reality is if you drive right over here, down towards Bay State Common,
Yeah.
there's that stone wall that they put up to separate the neighborhood from the road there, and they put trees all the way down it, but the stone wall's falling down, and it's been sitting there on the ground for a year, broken, I know, because I walk my dog by it every day, and the town doesn't fix it, and the people in the property don't fix it. all the trees are gone now because half of them died, so they end up cutting them out. That's the reality.
You had another hand up back there.
Well, I was gonna say, oftentimes, these builders put the trees in, they leave town, nobody takes care of them or waters them, and they don't flourish. I mean, it's very true.
Well, So one option when we look at financing, and we did a little research on this about a year ago. There are a number of projects where, because it's multifamily, it's a condo, that the housing trust maintains ownership of the land underneath. So that the housing trust has a responsibility as one of the property owners of the property to make sure it's properly maintained. Most of the housing trusts that have done that, I know there was one municipal trust looking at it, I don't know if they actually executed, are housing trusts for a town, but they don't operate as a municipal trust like we do, they operate as a 501c3 private charity. So for example, Northborough's Housing Trust, it's designated as the housing trust for the town, but it's actually a private charity that some people started long before Northborough ever said we want to vote and create a housing trust. And so we can also take a look at that and note that ongoing maintenance and concern, particularly density between this project and neighboring residents, and the visual, the noise, headlight, light bleed, all of that stuff has to be taken into consideration. And so this gives us some other ideas for concepts.
Shared property line, trees that are on the current property line were right behind at the top of the screen.
Okay.
So we probably have 5 or 6 maples that are on the property line.
Right.
So is that gonna be a joint decision? Do we?
Our intent, and what we asked the designers to do was to design in a way that we don't have to take any trees along the perimeter down.
And a lot of that back area is just field,
Yeah,
it's
so-
not, there aren't trees there are trees up in the front.
Oh, we looked at it every day.
And so Baylor Avenue, we had that same process going in. One of the abutters actually came and said, actually, this tree that spans the property line is dying. And interestingly enough, the side that was dying was over his property line. The trust had the developer remove the dead part of the tree, even though it was technically his responsibility, right?
Well, there used to be like a tree down there by the big huge cul-de-sac there.
Yep.
Like you said, there's trees that outcrop into that field that you're talking about.
Right.
But when they build that cul-de-sac, it's gonna be stuck right in our backyard.
Well, yeah, so, which is why I mentioned that we understand why the designer put this in, because they thought it was an interesting feature that could be fun for kids with bicycles and roller skates and stuff.
And it also addressed the fire department's ability to turn around.
It's interesting, this is to a certain scale, they actually have a scale model of a fire truck that they literally drive around on the paper, right? They don't just rely on the engineering drawings, they have the engineers who drive the fire trucks look at it too and say, yeah, I can make that, this will be easy, it won't delay us, etc.
I'm just saying,
So
that area would be gone,
we expect there's some work that needs to be done to do it. We didn't want to, we stopped spending money on the design work so we could get the concepts out and get feedback. But we'll go back and say, well, what does this look like if there's a key turnaround enough and all of this remains open field? Right? And that's where we're going as well, and that's what we're looking at as well.
So speaking of fire trucks.
Yes.
I live directly across from 12 Beach Street, and my house is lit up half the night from all the fire trucks. So if we're talking about putting, somewhat of a high density housing complex here, and we're looking at potentially more senior citizens, I am a little concerned of how many more emergency vehicles we'd be seeing on the street. There's a lot.
Yeah, it's multiple times a week.
Oh, yeah.
As we refine the concept and we know the ratio of units and really the number comes down to usually number of bedrooms, that will let us work with the fire department for their projections on what it means. And I will tell you, having been a member of the select board and dealing with this, and even, we look at even Del Webb, right? I'm very sensitive to the fact that those estimates often don't include enough margin of error in the expectation. Okay.
The other thing I wanted to say too is that we do also, because of 12th Beach Street, have a lot of people flying down the street.
Okay.
We have a lot of traffic. I think people avoid Cedar Street, they come down Beach Street, they turn onto Beachmont, they drive really fast. There's a lot of kids in the neighborhood.
Check out High Street extension.
Yeah.
I also wanted to
30
point
miles an
out,
hour was 30 down there, going 45, 50.
So,
it's,
so speed limit and speed control is something we should consider no matter what.
Yeah, check out High Street extension.
Just so you know what I'm hearing personally, and we'll talk about it as a committee as well, what I'm hearing is if we were putting up a single-family home, you would want us to take the opportunity to slow traffic down on the street.
Right.
Right? In fact, if we left the property vacant, you would like to slow the traffic on the street. We'll work for that.
And you know what?
Let me get them in the back and then we'll come
Speed
forward.
bumps don't help because they had them. Speed bumps don't help much because they had speed bumps at the end of Water Street and Willow Street, and they had to take them down and put signs. One of the neighbors put, "This is not a speedway. We have children here," and that doesn't stop the cars coming up from, where CVS is, all the way up. They fly up there, turn onto Willow Street. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about people
They use
walking.
that as a racetrack.
Yeah, so it's everywhere, I
I
think.
get that. I live off of a road that has been in extremely poor condition. You would damage your car if you went the speed limit.
Yeah.
It's now repaved. I can tell you, I saw someone, they're not even done repaving it yet, and there was someone who was probably doing 45, 50 miles an hour.
So you're talking to go through High Street extension and end up on Water Street, right where the bridge is.
Yep.
They fly around there.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
So we need to go back, DPW.
I'm surprised no kids
some of
get
this
bumped off.
is-
Question in the back.
Okay.
I was actually just gonna comment about the fact, the speed bumps that we had at the intersection, they took them all up.
Yes.
So,
They took them all up.
I mean, people fought for those and then they disappeared anyway. But my question would actually be to the town in terms of, I get we need affordable housing. My concern is the location, and I think anybody who drives on Main Street or through the Rotary knows we already have a lot of traffic that comes through. And we'd be adding all of, between both areas, at least 30 more cars every day. And there's already a lot of traffic every day. And then my other question is, nobody commented on the wetlands that would it impact on the High Street extension?
So,
Aren't there wetlands back there?
So High Street extension. I'll go with this one. So there's water in the middle of the property in the pit. We've been advised by the town's conservation director. Our assumption was that would be considered wetlands because it's wet. But the nature of it is such that it's not. So we initially walked onto this property assuming the 300 square feet of wet stuff in the middle would have to be replaced by 1,500 square feet of wetlands somewhere else on the property. At the end of the meeting, if you want, we can pull up the town GIS map. The wetlands that are predominantly on this property cross into our property as this property as well in the upper left corner. The guidance we've gotten from the Conservation Commission is that this layout should not be a problem. They're not saying it isn't a problem, right? They're saying conceptually this could work as far as setbacks and protection. There's some requirements as far as infiltration for stormwater we have to deal with. We all know about stormwater now. All of that, and deal with that as well to manage it. And so that'll go through. We will go, our plan is to go to the Conservation Commission before the RFP and ask them for the box or the boundary and say, you can build in this space on the property. And they're expecting us to do that. We've talked to the chair of that committee. They're open to do it. They've done it for other projects. At that point, after the RFP and we get the winning bid, the bidder then has to actually go to the Conservation Commission and say, look, I'm within the box. What other orders of condition do I need to meet, given what I want to do? At that point, the Conservation Commission, it's public meetings, public hearings, can still say you have to move this, you can't be so close here, given the design and the layout, the box doesn't work, we're gonna change the size of it, things of that nature. Our goal right now is guidance from them on what they think will work and be workable, so that when we get a plan, set of plans, and a bid from a developer, they'll be able to go and refine it and make sure it works and the wetlands are still protected. I will let you know that we were fully prepared, cost-wise for the project, to do wetlands expansion. And because continuous wetlands is better than non-contiguous wetlands, there was actually some excitement that we'd be adding to the wetlands that were there. So, and again, the conversations with the Conservation Commission have been informal to give us an idea so we can scope it for the RFP. We will be before them again in public meetings before we issue the RFP, so we understand the guidance that we want to require and other things we may not require but want to preference anyways. And all of that RFP will be published and we'll have input from the community on it as well before we issue it. Okay.
What is the current zoning for these two properties now?
I saw a hand up in the
Oh,
back
yeah,
that
hold on.
where people raise their
What was-
hands, it's usually,
Who had
I'm sorry
their hand up?
to get short.
In the corner?
A lot of people,
Hole in the middle of High Street Extension there.
Yep.
It's about 1,000 cubic yards of deep,
Yep.
okay? It's gonna take at least 50 dump trucks, filling that in and compacting every foot or two. Now, we're surrounded, our houses are 130 years old, Brubblestone. How are we gonna live with that vibration, the noise, the dirt, the dust, and the constant construction for months on end?
And the road is
Too small.
it's an old road.
Yeah, the road is small, old.
The road is old and small.
It's like 8 foot.
What I can tell you is that I don't have the answer to that question yet, but we know it's a concern and we know it's an issue that could stop the project as we get down the road. We know that. So what we do know is that the pit was dug out and then it was filled. It's already. That the nature of the property is actually looks like even potentially boulders were brought from other development or other projects and other properties in town and dumped into what was the pit, a larger pit at some point in time. So we have a high level view of the geology and what it's going to take to fill and what we might do for the grading. Again, that comes down to what we need the end result to look like. It's complicated by the fact it's not on this drawing. Oh, it is on this drawing. The town has a utility easement through the property as well. That wasn't actually on any of the deed documents with the registrar because it predated those documents. And so whatever design we have means that it has to be able to be dug up to access that should they ever need to do repairs. Right? So we can't put homes over it. We want to minimize the amount of pavement over it. There's a whole slew of issues that we still need to work through with the property and work in. We're note that the construction process, potential issues with soil compaction as we fill, vibration management is a concern. And I'll tell you the last thing I want to be doing is start a project and have the construction of that project damage and harm the homes. If there's damage to the road that we can expect, we can include as part of the RFP road resurfacing and rework to repair the road. That's not an uncommon thing that the town asks developers to do.
One thing that I actually do too is crush the rock on site, so that might be even more of an impact. Yeah, I mean, we're gonna have
We're not gonna blast.
No, you won't blast, but you'll crush the rock on site and use it for structural grade.
Well, months of.
So there'll be hours of
beating and-
operation where you'll have an input as to when any earth moving is done, you'll have an input of when any construction is done, you'll have, we can even theoretically, and Alan may correct me on this, but we could even ask the developer to have insurance, post-insurance in case there's any damage to neighboring properties. Which, ideally, the engineering department and DPW will look at everything, the developer plans, and give a green light to say it's not gonna have any impact. But we all know that in theory, not having an impact, maybe we can, ask them to put some insurance in place or some other measures in place to make sure that if there is damage, your homes are made whole.
Yes.
Now, the ZBA, would they allow this project from a private developer, say both properties? Or are you guys setting a precedent to come in and be able to do what you guys are doing with the properties?
If this were a private developer coming in, the ZBA would consider the project.
They would?
They would. And the reason they would is, even though it's doesn't match the underlying zoning for the community, is because the level of affordable housing is the quid pro quo benefit to the town. It's the benefit the town receives.
They're above that percentage, right?
So the above the percentage means that if the ZBA says we're not going to issue a permit, we can't appeal. We'd have to come back with a whole new design, start the process over, right? If we were below that 40B, 10% number, and we were a private developer, and the ZBA said, no, we're not going to issue a permit, the private developer goes to what's known as the Housing Appeals Committee. It's a pseudo court that's administrative, run by the state, and in 99.997 times, they order the zoning board of appeals to issue the comprehensive permit. Most ZBAs at that point say the decision of the Housing Appeals Committee is the permit. And we have developments in Westborough that has happened to. And where the town is doing. So we don't have leverage that a private developer has that says, well, if you decide against us, we'll go to the Housing Appeal Committee and then to Superior Court or to Land Court. We stop with the ZBA. So, and by the way, we've had potential projects, and we went to the ZBA informally to say, is this something you would consider? And they looked at it and they said, no.
There's a question in the
Yeah,
back.
question in the back, yes.
So the plan is also this is gonna be ADA compliant, correct?
So we're looking at having some of the units be what's known as fully ADA compliant, which means the entire home is wheelchair accessible.
Okay, so then.
And other things, so it's roll-in showers, it's the way the kitchen cabinets are designed, which unit it would be and how it would work, and whether it would be here or Beach Street, we don't know yet. That comes down in the design process because the logistics around as far as parking. So for example, this design could work because the parking is in front of the unit, or we could potentially modify the design to provide sheltered parking for that unit. We're working on that. Part of it is.
But then that might not have enough parking, because if you need to make it handicap accessible, those are usually bigger spots.
Right, so this has,
Are you accommodating for like exterior? Because if it needs to be wheelchair accessible, then.
right, so.
If there's a step, there's.
So in this design, this is a handicap spot, and it's got the extra space for van access. But if you're looking at fully ADA compliant, it's not just the parking space and the van access, it's the width of the doorways. And the complexity that adds to the project is, all the buildings will be the same blueprint, except for one or two. Right, and they're built to a different specification. You want wider turn radiuses in your hallways. It would probably be one story, otherwise you need some sort of stair lift or lift mechanism. We're taking that into consideration. Our current inclusionary zoning for multifamily housing requires 5% ADA compliant, I believe. And so we wanna honor that and deal with that.
That is fine.
Okay. So it's 8:45, we've been here a while. There was a question up here.
It's not about design because I'm still like
Yep.
taking it in, but it's about like where you said that you are looking for like all of you are looking for like more properties or something. So my question is, now we are here because our property is very close to this or the other one, but my question is there any way that when you are buying the property, is there anything that public hearing or something that we can raise our concerns earlier than later? So is there any platform where we can be a part of that process when you are thinking of buying a property? Like as they said about this property, that ground, that making sure that ground is raised, because we came for this property, we wanted we asked for like recreation
Yes.
area. So they assigned this property to that first, and we didn't follow up with that. But we didn't if we could have voice about like if we would have came to know it earlier that this is the plan and you bought this property for this or B Street property. So is there any way that we can know about it earlier?
So there are times where that will happen. Okay. Anytime first of all, anytime it's town-owned, the town can't transfer or sell property to the trust without a vote of town meeting. And so there'll be conversations there. When we're looking at private party, it really depends on how the property becomes available. The issue with the way Beach Street panned out is we became aware through a newspaper ad for the auction, right? And that property was going to be auctioned off. Okay? We have no control over that process. We knew we were potentially competing with private real estate developers and others for the property. The nature of the trust is that if we have funds, the trust can vote to spend those funds within certain limits. If we hit those limits, we have to go to the select board for oversight and concurrence and approval. So for Beach Street, if we had said, you know what, we better have a meeting about this, the auction would have happened by the time we could even have legally scheduled the meeting, okay, and to do a public hearing. And so part of the design of the trust is it lets us move. When we made the decision to buy Beach Street, you can go back and watch the videos on those discussions. Part of the discussion was, is if we get the property and we're not able to develop it, it's a saleable property. And it can always go back to the private sector and the private developer. And as a trust, we're allowed to sell property, we're allowed to do a lot of things along those lines that give us that flexibility. And so, yeah, we took a risk, a calculated risk that said, we think we can do some development here. We think we can do something that will work. We've had discussions about should it be 100% affordable or should we do a mix of market rate and affordable for the economics of the project. All of those factors come into consideration. We are moving much slower than a private developer would with this land, in part because we have a public trust that we have to honor. We have those guiding principles. So let me wrap up and sort of talk about the timing where we are. We're at the point now, we're going to take your feedback. We know we have some additional design work to do, reconsider our density discussions and considerations, some other neighborhood mitigation and adaptability and fit-in factors. We'll do that work. In parallel, we'll continue to start writing the RFP. It's a long, difficult process. Town council loves us when we write RFPs because they have to guide us along the way. We are months away from issuing the RFP. RFPs technically tend to go out for typically 60 days. We then have a period of time where we can open and evaluate and make our decision. That's usually 30 to 60 days. It means if things went as fast as possible, we're probably issuing the RFP, I think, February or March. We'd have the responses back April, May, probably more like June. At that point, we award the bidder. There's some legal work that has to happen with the bidder. It's supposed to go quickly. With Baylor Avenue, the legal work ended up taking 3.5 months because the buyer's lender had a concern about a 22-year-old fuel spill on the property, right? That was not documented. That was found by the title company somewhere. So we're looking June, July. At that point, the winning bidder has to start the permitting process. Before they even come to the planning board, because part of the process we're requiring is planning board concurrence before they go to the ZBA for the permit, they're gonna need to do the engineering work, the design work, the architecture. They spend money. A lot of money to get it to the point where it says, here are plans, we can answer all of your questions, we can address the issues. Our process that we're defining, they will go to the planning board for the concurrence. They need to go before conservation and get approval. With the historic district, we've asked the historical commission to take on the role of providing approval for the design and some of the layout items, so that there'll be public meetings about the look of the project on Beach Street and how it fits into the neighborhood, how it honors the key elements of the historic neighborhood designation. And at that point, when the committees are in agreement, the developer will then move and start the actual permitting process with the ZBA, who will have their own set of questions and discussions and requirements and go on. Once they file the permit with the ZBA, the decision is supposed to be made within 6 months. So we're probably, I wouldn't expect if they win in June that they're not going to file with the ZBA until September, October maybe. This is now 2026. The ZBA would finish their permitting in the spring of '27, and that's when, at that point, construction would start as soon as the financing is final. Because whatever the developers arranged with respect to financing today, who knows what the Fed's going to do over the next 3 years? Interest rates? Right, none of us. They then have to make sure they have the financing for the project before they put a shovel in the ground. Okay. So a private developer, again, they wouldn't be talking to you before they file the plans. They'd use the 6 months, and they generally don't file permits unless they have their financing predominantly arranged. They fine tune it, and they're off and running quickly. So it's a lengthy process. It's part of the reason municipal construction is more expensive than private construction, but it also gives us the opportunity to continue to get feedback, address concerns, and adjust the project so that it works well for the neighborhood and the community, the town, as well as is the residents who are going to be living in the units. And that,
Thank everybody.
I want to thank you. We actually need a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn?
All right,
Okay, all in favor?
I second the motion.
We're adjourned.
Hey, everybody,
I'm happy to hang out for a
our
few
meetings are
minutes.
televised, they're public, you can come and watch us. We have one Friday. I know it's a lot of meetings, a lot of town meetings, but if you're interested in what we do, everything's posted, the agendas, the minutes, the videos are on Westborough TV.
All right, Westborough TV is here tonight. We want to thank them.
Yeah, thank you. We're also putting up as much information as possible on the website. If there's information that isn't there that you'd like to see, let me know. Send an email to the trustees. If we have it, we'll post it.
Make out that.